This is Focus on the News. I'm Senator Dick Black, retired senator. We've got Jose Vega in the background. For some of you, Jose is sort of a great hero of the anti-war movement, and he was the one. He was on Tucker Carlson just recently with just a magnificent intervention that they did, where they, he challenged AOC at a town hall meeting, and basically shut down her meeting by, laying out the fact that she was going to be this anti-establishment peace person, and now she's just gotten on the war wagon. So anyway, Jose, it's good to have you in the background, and appreciate that. Let me just get into and lay out some of the things that we're going to talk about today. We've got 4 topics that we'll go through. The first one is there's a red wave that is hitting the New York congressional races. The next thing that we'll hit on is that Republican Blake Masters has gotten a huge boost in the Arizona Senate race. After that, we'll talk a little bit about Elon Musk firing the Twitter censors and blocking $122 million in severance bonuses that they would have gotten in normal circumstances. And then finally, a very mysterious and rather sinister report about the fact that minutes after the European gas pipelines, the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, were sabotaged, the British Prime Minister texted the US Secretary of State and said, "It's done." That's the only thing. It's done. And I think this was actually 1 minute after the explosion took place. Kind of an eerie thing. Let me just get started. This is actually not directly one of those 4 topics, but something flashed up on Fox Business News this morning and caught my attention. And they were saying that among white suburban women voters, there's been just a sea change in preferences. Last election, it was plus 12 for the Democrats. They had a higher percentage by 12 points. That has shifted to a higher percentage, 15 points for Republicans. So you put those two together, there has actually been a 27% shift from where white suburban women were last election to where they are now. That's just astronomical. So in any event, things seem to be looking worse and worse for the Democrats as we approach the elections, and we're getting down to the final days now. Okay, so the first thing we want to touch on, there was a good article in slate.com, and I think that's a liberal publication, but they said that there is a red wave that is about to hit New York, and they're blaming Andrew Cuomo because of his judicial appointments or something. But the bottom line to it is that when the Democrats redistricted, they're in control, so they're the ones who do the redistricting of the state. They draw the lines, and they made a classic mistake. Republicans do it, Democrats, where they overreached. And usually the safest thing you could do is you compress all of your voters into a few districts, and then you keep the other team's voters in other districts. But if you want, you can You can gerrymander a little, and it's legal gerrymandering, but you water down your districts so that you can get more of them. And it's okay as long as the political winds don't shift. You can pull off a tremendous advantage in Congress or in the Senate or whatever. Well, not the Senate, because the districts are set by state boundaries. But with the congressmen, you actually divide up the state. In any event, what the New Yorkers did is they went overboard in redistricting, and they had expected that the Republicans might only there would be only 3 congressional seats in play for the Republican. As it turns out, there are now 9 out of the 26 congressional seats in New York that are seriously at risk of going Republican. So if that happens, of course, that's a tremendous blow to the Democrats in Congress. So in any event, that is the latest really positive news for Republicans as we get ready to go into this election. Okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the U.S. Senate race out in Arizona, where Blake Masters he's a MAGA Republican, and they had a libertarian third candidate, and he was splitting the vote to where some of the anti-war Republicans were, well, Republicans and Democrats, but they're anti-war, and they were backing the libertarian candidate in Arizona. So that was it was taking more strength from the Republican than from the Democrat, because the Democrats are totally pro-war. It's a war war party at this point, and the Republicans, some of the old bulls are on the war train, but the young bucks tend to be anti-war, tend to be skeptical of all of these overseas commitments that are bankrupting the country and just sowing chaos around the globe. In any event, the libertarian not only dropped out of the race after he spoke with Blake Masters, and he said that he found Blake Masters was supportive of the global peace movement, and for that reason he enthusiastically endorses him. Well, now after that, former Congressman Ron Paul, who is sort of the icon of the libertarian movement, he came out and gave a very strong endorsement of Blake Masters, which really kind of sealed the deal. So what we're saying is here's another situation. The Senate prospects keep getting worse and worse for Democrats. And one of the problems for Dems is that they have hitched their party to the Dick Cheney, John McCain war wagon of go to war with everybody on the planet, spend money overseas, don't worry about our own borders, don't worry about law and order, anything. Two thoroughly corrupt people, in my opinion, Dick Cheney and John McCain. But their element in the party is fading. Meanwhile, the Democrats have jumped on their war wagon, and it's taken them right over the cliff. It's interesting that, you know, when Joe Biden pushed through his fantastically large $40 billion war weapons bill for Ukraine, there were 57 Republicans who voted no. They opposed that war funding, but every single Democrat, including the AOC, whatever they call them, the Quad, all of these radical ladies who have, you know, they say, oh, you know, we're so liberal. Baloney. They're sold out to the arms dealers. they're crooked as the day is long. And so every single Democrat voted yes to prolong the bloodshed and the horror in Ukraine. So we're seeing some shifts. But important for people to remember that early after Russia went into Ukraine, they went in February. 2 months later, by April, the two sides had hammered out a peace agreement. They were going to put the war to an end and make some adjustments for both sides. Prime Minister Boris Yeltsin of Great Britain flew unexpectedly to Kiev, and he ordered an end to the peace talks. He says, "No, we're going to have war. We're not going to have peace." And now this is my words, not his exact words, obviously. But in any event, Boris Johnson would no way have gone and done that, broken up the peace arrangements, had it not been approved by the White House. And so subsequent to that, because the Biden administration would not allow peace to take hold, there have been, I would say, easily 100,000 Ukrainian and Russian young men slaughtered on the battlefield needlessly, accomplishing nothing except funding the arms dealers and lining the pockets of the sons of influential politicians, both Republican and Democrat, who go over and they work deals like the Burisma. Hunter Biden over there, he gets appointed to a board because his daddy has a lot of power. But anyway, we'll see. But anyway, it's great. We'll see where all that goes. Now the next thing that we've got. This is about the continuing Twitter saga. Twitter, of course, was supposedly this free market of ideas, and then they turned into an instrument of censorship. And that went along, and of course, it didn't go very well for them in terms of their corporate profits. A lot of people bailed out, just abandoned them. And anyway, so Elon Musk, after a long time, has taken over. He owns Twitter today. And one of the first things he did is he fired 4 of the top executives for cause. In other words, for sort of misconduct or whatever you want. But anyway, it's for cause. And in the course of that, he avoids paying them $122 million in golden parachutes. So he fired this chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, the chief legal officer, and the general counsel. So that will be very costly for those mega uber wealthy liberals, and we will see how that all plays out. But there's this one, Vijaya Gady, I think that's the best I can pronounce. But anyway, she became a lightning rod of controversy because she played a key role in aggressively policing Twitter's platform and censoring and banning users who dared to talk about COVID, about the January 6th demonstrations at the Capitol, about Ukraine, about so many different things where censorship, iron rules of censorship were applied. And anyway, she was supposed to get $20 million, and now she's out of pocket $20 million, I guess. Chump change for a person like her. But in any event, Elon Musk is moving quickly. He's about making money in addition to freedom of speech. He plans to lay off 75% of Twitter's workforce, which is, Twitter employs 7,500 people. So you do the math, but that's a lot of people losing their jobs in Silicon Valley. He also fired Twitter's entire board of directors. So he's doing a lot of good. We'll see where it all plays out. Okay, the final topic I want to touch on today. Let me just start. This deals with a communication between the British Prime Minister Liz Truss. Now she's now out of office, but at the time this occurred, she was the Prime Minister, and she sent a text to the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken immediately after the Nord Stream gas pipelines were sabotaged and blown up through mammoth explosions under the sea. And apparently her communication was intercepted and published. Let me begin by saying that these two gas pipelines were essentially the lifeblood of European industry and heating and just basically life in Europe. The entire economy relied on these two pipelines bringing gas in from Russia. Russia is the largest exporter of natural gas in the world. And so there's a great relationship between Russia and between Germany especially and the other surrounding countries. And Russia was a very reliable supplier of gas through thick and thin until the U.S. essentially ordered the EU to impose sanctions and to stop paying for the gas. They just refused to comply with their contracts, and they made it very difficult to transact business. The Russians made some extraordinary adjustments and said, well, okay, we're going to require you to pay in rubles. If you won't pay in other currencies, then pay in rubles. We'll take our own currency. And so there was the gas supply coming in from Russia was cut. And then finally, the NATO countries, and I think with the direction and go ahead from the United States, sabotaged and blew up the lifeline to Europe. And they did it just on the verge of winter time. So the whole movement is it's just insanely reckless what they've done. But here's the thing. There's someone who calls him or herself Kim.com, a self-proclaimed internet freedom fighter. And it says that the former UK minister Liz Truss sent a text message saying it's done to the US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken immediately after the Nord Stream attack. Kim.com says that this particular text message is the reason that Russia believes the United Kingdom was involved in blowing up the gas pipeline. The U.S. has relied on Great Britain for a lot of the undercover military activities that are going on within the Ukraine, things that are directed against Russia. The latest thing, of course, is the attacks on the Kerch Bridge, which connects Crimea to mainland Russia. And we know that those attacks have been directly led by British soldiers. So the Brits are way, way out on a limb in terms of being very close to triggering World War III. And I think there's certainly a very strong element of the deep state, all of these international operatives, NATO, many different organizations, the sinister Five Eyes, that type of thing. And they all are, they have strong elements that want a thermonuclear war, and thinking that perhaps they can bully the Russians into, not responding with nuclear weapons in reply. We really are in a time where people are governed by total lunatics. But just to continue here, this is a quote from Liz, or was it Kim.com, I think. Liz Truss used her iPhone to send a message to Secretary Blinken saying, quote, "It's done," a minute after the pipeline blew up and before anybody else knew, he told his 1 million Twitter followers. Fortunately, Twitter hasn't barred Kim.com at this point, and hopefully they never will. .com suggested that there was an iCloud hack that gave them access to the information. Now, there was some confirmation from what Kim.com reported, because the United Kingdom's Daily Mail, which is it's the largest news service with the highest circulation in Great Britain, and on Sunday, they reported that private messages between Liz Truss and other international foreign ministers, including some about Ukraine, had fallen into foreign hands. Now, this was just recently. This really just came out from the Daily Mail. So that certainly verifies what Liz.com or Kim.com is saying. On October 29th, the Russian Ministry of Defense said they came out and they did say publicly that the British Navy was involved in the sabotage of the Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines. Now, there is no way that the United Kingdom takes any action in the Ukrainian war without U.S. permission. So it is not at all surprising that Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, would be advised as soon as the sabotage of Europe's energy lifeline was complete. Doing this really undermines American respectability in the eyes of Europeans as this business gets to be known. People in Germany and France and Belgium and Italy, they're coming to realize that we're not their friend. We take actions without any regard for what it does to them. And it's just part of this empire building that has been going on now for decades and decades. And we've got to get back to respectability and stop all this empire building and trying to control everything that everybody does or thinks on every corner of the planet. But it's always important when you're reading the news to understand the United States runs NATO. We are NATO. We fund NATO. We direct NATO. It does nothing without U.S. permission. And there would be no war in Ukraine unless the Obama administration back in 2014 had not overthrown the duly elected Ukrainian government. They had a president that everybody had voted on. There was not much controversy about the election. Everybody said it's a good election. And anyway, the U.S. and the United Kingdom went in. There were CIA operatives, and there were MI6. These are the British intelligence operatives. And together, they worked to help overthrow the elected government of Ukraine, install a revolutionary junta, very violent, very, I don't know whether you call it racist, but it's a very ethnocentric government of people who hated anyone who spoke the Russian language. And they did some horrible things to Russian speakers. Well, the Russian speakers are predominantly on the Russian border, places like the Donbass. And in 2014, President Obama started this tremendous flood of weapons to build up a huge army of Ukrainians, principally to fight and kill Russians. And they began doing it. Under the revolutionary junta, you had the Donbass and you had Crimea, which were both very heavily Russian. And they said, look, we're not going to, we're okay. We'll be Ukrainians as long as we get a vote. But all of a sudden you've taken away our vote, and we're told that we've got to listen to a revolutionary junta installed by Obama's minions and by the British, and we're not going for it. We want to go back home to Russia, where we always lived. And so 14,000 people had been killed before Russia ever crossed the border on February 24th of this year. This war was planned under the Obama administration. One of the reasons that Donald Trump was ousted from office, using the Russian hoax, using all of this, fraudulent, forged applications to the FISA court, the top secret FISA court. All of this was done to overthrow Trump, not because they didn't like his hairstyle or they thought he used Twitter too much. They overthrew him because he was a mortal threat to the plans of the deep state to conduct this massive war against Russia, which is intended to be a World War III operation. And a great portion of these people believe that nuclear arms should be used, which puts all of our lives at risk. Every single one of us, my wife and I, our children, our grandchildren, our friends, the people who attend church, all of them are being put at risk of death in a nuclear holocaust by the Dick Cheneys and the John McCains and the Liz Cheneys and the AOCs and all of these, and many on the Republican side too, who they share this great secret. Okay, yeah, we're going to do this war. We're going to expand it. We're going to make it into a global war. We're just sort of wait until we can put in place some events to trigger it, and then blame it on Russia, and off we go. Anyway, I think these elections will give us a glimmer of hope of stopping this disaster from rolling forward. And I am quite excited about the elections. I think things are looking good. The new crop of people who are coming into office will be a lot different than some of the old ones. Now, some of them will get co-opted very quickly. I understand that Mike Pompeo has been assigned to sort of ride herd on all the new congressmen and senators and make sure that they understand that we got to push for war. We got to have some bloodshed over there in Ukraine, and we got to smash those Ruskies, right? Knock their teeth out. This is a guy who has never served in combat in his life, but people like that always are the most. They're always the strongest advocates for sending other people to die. So in any event, that is the news for today. I think we've got some hope. I think we're moving forward, and so we'll see. But in any event, I will be back to see you soon. This has been Focus on the News. I'm Dick Black. Thank you for being with us today.